A Rhode Island landlord was forced to sell her property because of the eviction moratorium. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today. And, once again, it's all about the eviction moratorium. But before I get into that article, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll keep working to bring you great articles about the eviction moratorium and other news that's of interest to landlords. This thing isn't over yet, but hopefully it will be ending soon because, there's other news out there about real estate investing and about landlords other than the eviction moratorium. Anyway, this article comes from WPRI.com and it says, "Far too much government interference. Landlord says eviction moratorium forced her to sell her rental home." Smithfield, Rhode Island. Trish Williams has been a landlord for decades and bought the home she rents out in Greenville with the intention of ultimately having it become her retirement home. But she claims the federal eviction moratorium has made it impossible for her to keep the property. "I wasn't out to make a killing," Williams told 12 News. "That was not my goal. It was just to have somebody there until I said, okay, that's the last tenant. Now we're going to fix it up. I was going to put a porch in, rip the trees out. I had all kinds of plans for it." So yeah, this sounds like the typical mom and pop landlord who owns one rental house here or there and just, was putting or holding on to it so that it could be part of their retirement plan. But once again, we have all this interference from the government coming in and just completely just trashes on the plan altogether. When it comes to the eviction moratorium, it's really put a lot of small landlords, mom and pop landlords, such as myself, in a very hard place, okay? The federal eviction moratorium was enacted to prevent out-of-work and low-income tenants from being kicked out for not paying rent. The policy has kept scores of people from ending up on the streets and has been extended 3 times. Data shows 1,306 evictions for non-payment of rent were filed with the courts between January and June 15th of this year, according to Assistant State Court Administrator Craig Burke. That number is down compared to previous years. During that same time period in 2019, Burke said there were 3,053 eviction filings for non-payment, and in 2020, there were 1,562. So the eviction moratorium is working, right? And even here in this article, it says that the moratorium was enacted to prevent out-of-work and low-income tenants from being kicked out for not paying rent. The problem is, though, that the burden fell on the landlord, okay? The burden did not fall on the government. The burden fell on the landlord to provide low-income people housing and to provide out-of-work people housing, okay? So all of a sudden, the burden was shifted to people like me, small landlords, to provide housing for the poor and for the unemployed. Now, that doesn't quite sound right, because a private party shouldn't have to put up, low-income and unemployed people in their property for free. Okay, especially when their business relies upon them actually making enough money to pay their bills. Okay, there's expenses involved here. Now, I do believe that the government does have a responsibility of taking care of those in need. And the government also has a responsibility of making sure that if they put a business, a landlord out of business, they need to make sure that landlord gets paid. So maybe the government should have stepped in immediately and made sure those funds got to the landlords. But that's not what happened. Williams said her tenants stopped paying rent back in January. She said without their monthly payments, she's been struggling to keep up with the cost of owning the property. "It's too bad," Williams said, wiping away tears. "It hurts when you have a dream and it's crushed by the rules, the regulations, the government, and the state. It's my property. I maintain it," she continued. "I take care of it, and there's far too much government interference." Yeah, and I agree. Too much government interference. Preventing a property owner from being able to do what they want with the property that they own. Okay, I do believe that this falls down to property rights, and those rights are protected within the Constitution. It's just not right to have the government take those rights away from a property owner and leave them struggling like they did. Williams isn't alone. Keith Fernandez, a spokesperson for the Rhode Island Coalition of Housing Providers, tells 12 News he's decided to sell all of his rental properties and move out of state, in part due to the eviction moratorium. No landlord ever wants to evict somebody, certainly not in a pandemic, Fernandez said. For me personally, I just can't look another tenant in the eye and say, listen, the other tenants are making noise, but I can't do anything about it because I'm not allowed to evict them. Williams tells 12 News she was eventually able to evict her tenants for issues unrelated to non-payment. She plans on fixing the house up and selling it as soon as she possibly can. And see, here's the thing, okay? Fortunately, the lady was able to eventually evict these tenants, but they were for other issues, maybe for, other issues not related to the fact that they weren't paying. But not paying is the biggest issue to a landlord, okay? It's not having a dog in the property when they didn't say they were going to have a dog. That's not the big issue to a landlord. The big issue is when they're not able to get rental payment from a tenant. So here's the thing that a lot of tenants don't understand, okay? Most landlords have mortgages on their property, so the mortgage has to be paid. We also have to pay for property insurance. We also have to pay the property taxes. And if we have a tenant in the property, the landlord is generally in charge of maintenance. So we will have to take care of all the repairs, all the capital expenditures. If that furnace goes out, if that air conditioner goes out, if the roof starts leaking, guess who pays for it? The landlord. So when we don't get any rental income, all of those things are just coming straight out of our pocket. It's not like we own these properties free and clear, and it's not like most landlords have a huge bank account that can cover 2 years of lost rent. No, I mean, most of us have a few months of emergency reserves just in case something happens, and after that, then we're relying on credit, or we just are going to be forced into bankruptcy, foreclosure, or just selling the property. So yeah, you really have to look at it from the landlord's perspective when you're looking at all of these eviction moratoriums. We don't want to kick people to the curb. The thing we want to keep people in the property. We just want to get paid, okay? So that we can keep our properties, make a little bit of money, and then the tenant is happy because they have somewhere to live. And that's it. We're just business owners, just like the business owner who down the street who has the grocery store or the restaurant, okay? So we should be treated with respect just like they are.